you think about what we learned here. And if you have anything to add to this, if you know anything about how time of death is determined that's maybe more advanced, or another thing from the scene you can recall that you think could be added into this to help determine the time of death, I would be really curious and thankful to hear those opinions and ideas. And that's it.
Have you guys ever seen that video that Shia LaBeouf did, and he called it art, where he just stood and stared directly into the camera for 3 hours and didn't say anything?
Have you ever seen the art exhibit of the lady who set up chairs and sat there? She's had people from the public come stare in her eyes.
Yeah, interesting.
People
Interesting.
literally stood in line for 8 hours just to come stare in her eyes.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I feel like in person is a little different than what you would
camera.
have over a camera. You know what I mean? You lose the personal element. But welcome everybody. Welcome. I do want to give a couple shout outs here. So we have Art of Deduction in the chat hanging out with us, which is incredible. He is another true crime content creator and makes awesome content, goes live all the time also. So if you love true crime and you want to hear more about some of the main cases, I mean, he's a beast with the Delphi case. So make sure you check him out. I also had one of our viewers share that Dago had mentioned us and gave us a shout out as well. So make sure you check him out as well. Dago, the True Crime Cafe with Dago. Awesome content as well, you guys. And I think we've said it a lot, but all there should be in the true crime community is support. You know, there's hundreds of billions of views, and there's no reason why we need to fight over any of it. We all are brilliant human beings, and by bringing our minds together, whether we agree or not, that's where real progress gets made. You know, if you put a whole room of scientists together that all believe the same thing, do you think they're going to figure out anything new? No, definitely not. But you put a whole bunch of scientists in a room that don't agree, and they're progress.
Going to murder each other.
Right. They're going to find new ways to end each other, right? No, but that's where the progress is made, right? So regardless of if somebody has the same belief system as us or opinions or anything like that, it doesn't matter. You know, what a couple people that believe very different views with some of the cases that we've talked about before is J is for Justice, Drunk Turkey, and we appreciate them and respect them as content creators, even though they have a different view, and some of our viewers might not want to watch them. It goes the same for their viewers and us as well, you know, but it's not easy being a content creator. And there's no reason to make it harder for each other. You know what I mean? So make sure you check out Art of Deduction. Make sure you check out Dago and let them know we sent you over there. So welcome everybody to the True Crime Talk Show, the one and only, brought to you by Thought Riot Podcast. And we just got done. Yes. Hello, everybody. And make sure Look, I just had a viewer remind me of this and I was already forgetting. All right. So make sure you smash that like button and you leave a comment in the comments section of videos. That goes a long, long, long way. That is the most support that you can give any content creator out there, is letting YouTube know that you are interested in the video, whether you agreed with the opinion or not. It helps the video get seen more, and so smash that like button, leave a comment in the comment section. Unfortunately, the chat doesn't help with visibility. I wish it did, but it doesn't. So yeah, do those things and we appreciate you. We are all Thought Riot Podcast, all of us, one giant thought writing hive mind, and we're making moves and figuring things out. So you can find us on every podcast platform and every social media platform out there, and we are always / Thought Riot Podcast, spelled all the way out, Thought Riot Podcast, except for Twitter. Twitter, we are Thought Riot Pod. But welcome to the show, everybody. One other statement I want to make is, it's fun in the chat. People have a really good time in the chat, and I love that. However, we all come from different backgrounds, and when we're talking through text, it's really important that you lose the human element behind that text, right? So you could say something in joking, and somebody's not going to understand it in the same way they would as if they were in front of you, because they're not getting your body language, they're not getting your tone, your tonality. So just be aware of that and make sure that we have respect above all things, right? Because there's no way you're ever going to get your point heard. There's no way you're ever going to get your opinion heard if you're presenting it in a disrespectful way. So, yeah, I think we got through all the important stuff. So that's an interesting topic.
What is?
The time of death topic. And it was one of those topics. I put it in the expert playlist. So for any of you out there that just love the science like I love the science, are obsessed with statistics, are obsessed with learning exactly how investigators get down to the nitty gritty, go to one of our playlists called Expert Topics. And that is the topics like time of death, like cell phone coverage, like the expert type focus topics. And that's where you'll find all the science at. So, but one thing I really enjoyed is I really enjoyed watching the video back again, because when I'm in the conversation, like I was in the video, my thinking is different from when I'm watching the video and myself. And I'm sitting there thinking about some of the questions I'm asking and some of the things that I'm saying. And I realized going through that, and I think I realized it because of our chat and how many people were bringing up really great questions and concerns with it. But the variables in this crime specifically, in the Idaho 4 case against Bryan Kohberger, the variables in that crime scene are literally endless, even when it comes down to food in the stomach. Because, there's been quite a few leaks about the amount of damage that was done, right, to the victims. And we've heard talk about the size of the knife. Okay. So just take a second here, you guys, and, hold out 8 to 10 inches and then put it against your side. I mean, that is serious damage. Now, imagine where some of that damage was at. I've heard personally, we don't know. This is unconfirmed, right? But we've heard some of that damage was to the core of the body, which would not only add additional variables to body temperature and core temperature, but it could also, depending where that damage was at, not allow them to use food as a verifying factor of time of death.
Yes, it could mess that up.
Yeah, I mean,
There's a lot of factors when it comes to determining time of death when they're looking at the body, and temperature and wounds can make a pretty significant difference in them determining those things. They have to take all this stuff and then they have to calculate it all. Like they have to use formulas and they have to calculate it all into a formula and come up with an answer. But there's so many variables that it's hard. That's why time of death and there's multiple types, okay, of time of death. There's a legal time of death, like when the coroner arrived and said these people are gone. Um, and then there's a physiological time of death, which is actually when that person's heart stopped and they are no longer here. Determining
right.
that when there is not a doctor literally watching it happen, determining that it's always an estimate. It is never ever exact. I know there are some new forms of science that are looking at DNA and cell death and things like that, but it doesn't seem like those are like really standard practice so far. Like they are kind of
True.
experimental. They're still figuring
Pacemaker.
them out,
Yeah,
things like that.
technology is literally probably one of the best time of deaths there is. Makes me wonder if anybody was wearing an Apple Watch or a
That's what I was
workout
about to
watch.
say. If anybody was wearing a Fitbit or an Apple Watch, that would be very interesting to see that data.
I mean, I think there's a whole multitude of different ways to estimate time of death, okay? And here's another one that I was thinking about. So we've heard that Xana was on TikTok, right? Okay. So if I'm an investigator, one of the things that I would do is button up my shirt. That's one of the things I would do. I had a button pop. So one of the things that I would do is get the background application data for TikTok to find out what was being clicked, right?
Right.
And I think it's important that if it seems like someone was in the middle of clicking something, someone was in the middle of a comment, someone was in the middle of something that they were doing, right? Like the traditional line of thinking. So if you pull patterns of so human beings, we love consistency. We love our patterns. We love to do the same things over and over and over and over, even to our detriment, you guys. So in a situation like that, this goes back to statistics, the area that I'm obsessed with and love. There's nothing more that I love than statistics, but you could go back and look at the last usage of Xana for the last month, and you could track, you know, what is her most likely usage pattern on the platform. Does she have a habit of looking at between 5 and 10 videos, then commenting on one, then putting her phone down? Does she have a, you know what I mean? And then looking at what was going on within the app at the around that time, and try to figure, was it her, wasn't it her? Can you show differences in the usage? Because there have been people out there that have speculated, hey, maybe it was the suspect that was using her phone. I think that there are ways out there to at least get a better understanding of what could have went on in that crime scene using technology in that manner.
I mean, I find it really interesting that within the PCA, when they are determining the time of the crime, they are not even speaking on time of death. They're not even speaking on autopsies or any kind of science like that. They are strictly speaking on phone records of the surviving witnesses and statements. Like, that's how they determined the time of the crime and Xana's
I know
phone, which is I just wanna say this, I find it really odd that
the
they
statement.
they say that okay, Kathy Mabbitt said it was most likely they were asleep in their beds, yet there's so many contradicting statements to that. For instance, Xana getting a DoorDash order at 4 AM, which is like right around the time this is about to happen. You're telling me she scarfed down that food within literally 5 minutes and was done and asleep? Also, Dylan heard Kaylee, what she thought was Kaylee, saying, "I think somebody's here." And now we know Kaylee was sitting up.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
we aren't
and they
100%
are
sure where that "I think someone's here," and
Dylan said that, it's in the
right.
PCA, but listen, both of them, Kaylee and Xana, are the ones who are said to have defensive wounds, and they are the ones we have the evidence for that could have been awake. So why? If we know that and it contradicts the them being asleep thing, then why was that ever a thing?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know. I've had issues with the eyewitness statements from the very beginning. No eyewitness is reliable. I'm sorry, you guys. Unless, like, I know people love to lean on eyewitnesses, and I do too. I think that they are like what we say all the time, right? Don't trust what we're saying. I do not want to mislead people and suggest everything we're saying is the truth. What I would like you guys to do is take what we're saying, use it as a carrot, right? That guiding, leading carrot, and go verify and find out for yourself. But it should be the same with eyewitness statements because we are emotional beings. There's no way around it, right? And we have proven time and time and time and time again. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of experiments out there where we have proven over and over and over that emotions change our memory in a multitude of different ways. Whether you're remembering a traumatic experience, whether you're remembering a happy experience, whether you're remembering a scary experience, all those things change the way that our memories work. That's another reason why police, if they're doing the right thing, right, should be taking the eyewitness account right in the beginning, waiting 2 weeks and taking it again. And then, compare and contrast those things. So when we're talking about Dylan's statement, I just don't have a lot of faith in that, okay? And it has nothing personal to do with her. It has nothing to do with the fact that I think she personally is unreliable. That has nothing to do with it. It has to do with the fact that all humans that are not sociopaths and that have emotions are unreliable. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, I think, the human emotional element taints a lot of our views and memories on things, quite a bit. But I think the witness statements also, I mean,
hey, Twitch user,
you also
welcome.
yes, yes. You also don't know how inebriated she was.
Uh,
Like, we have no idea what her state of mind
More
was.
variables, yeah.
We have no idea anything that was going on with her that night. Also past trauma. Like, for instance, I thought it was plausible that because she came from a home that had some domestic violence, that whole thing with thinking Ethan and Xana were in a fight was plausible. I still think it's
Yeah.
plausible and a possibility.
Give a brief rundown of that though, because I do think that's important. That's an important
So
plausibility.
so that came out after the While Idaho Sleeps book, and basically Dylan's father in that book said Dylan heard, commotion and thought that it was Ethan and Xana fighting, and then the whole, like, "It's okay, I'm here to help" thing was Ethan trying to console Xana, a crying Xana, and, then it was quiet and she just,
Mhm.
saw that person leave and she thought everything was fine, I
Yeah.
guess. But she misinterpreted all of the sounds.
Right, and that can
And I
be
think that's
done
possible.
because, if you have a background in dealing with, certain abusive, whether it's verbally, whether it is, physically, whatever, that's going to alter your opinion and the way that you remember a crime. Now, here's another example, okay? And remember, like, Dylan is just the shoe-in in this example, guys. I am not speaking personally on her behalf, okay? But imagine Dylan had some traumatic situation happen to her, and her the person, the suspect in whatever that traumatic situation was somebody that was 5'10" roughly and bushy eyebrows. Then you put her in a situation where an extreme level of fear to the same level of a traumatic situation that happened in the past, that can literally pull you back into that, and you're going to mask what your perpetrator was from that original situation onto the current one. And these are just examples of why eyewitnesses are unreliable, but that happens all the time, all the time. I mean, a really extreme example is PTSD in our military. After they go across seas and then come back, right? They will hear a pop, they will hear a loud noise, they'll hear someone shout, and that automatically brings them back into that situation. Now, how reliable is that eyewitness account?
Right.
A whole grand jury indictment was hindered on that. That's what they hung the grand jury on. That is wild. That is so wild. And I don't think I've seen that talked about enough, that why would you hang your grand jury indictment on that if you had actual evidence? That is a gamble, dude, because if I was on that grand jury, that would not have been okay. I would not have been okay with that level of evidence.
Yeah, agreed. I think, I mean, it's really telling that 6 grand jurors wanted more evidence, and we're told no. It's very, very telling, especially considering, well, I don't know if I wanna get into that yet, because 'cause I'm probably gonna talk about it more this
Yeah, then
upcoming
don't.
week.
Just wait.
Especially considering just some of the things I've seen in the motions.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
if they
We've
were
been going back through some of the filings, you guys, and like I said, in the PCA, I have some mega bombs that, I didn't read the first time. And I did this thing recently where I read the PCA backwards. So if you read it section by section backwards, that gives you fresh eyes to look at something. Because again, this goes back to us humans are habit forming creatures, and we're constantly having to fight against our own built-in habits, right? So you got to do things a little bit different. You got to shake them up. So if you want fresh eyes at something, read it backwards, like by paragraph. So the last paragraph, then the second to last paragraph, then you know what I mean? And it helps you see things differently.
Yeah, that's interesting. Really interesting. You didn't tell me about that
I
until
mean,
now?
I told you I didn't tell you about reading it backwards like that. That's just something that I've done at work when I'm doing sales and trying to come up with a new angle, a new way to, get approvals for certain things. So for me, it's just a habit, it's not even something I think about like, oh, this great new thing. I've been using it for years type thing. So yeah.
Yeah.
But going
You know what is another interesting contradiction that I've been contemplating is the phone calls and texts ending at 2:50 something with Kaylee and Maddie. And I find that weird because of the whole Kaylee saying, supposedly what Dylan thought she heard was possibly Kaylee saying somebody's here, and also the playing with the dog is what she thought she heard, which may not have been. It may have been the actual crime. Um, but wait, which one came first? Playing with the dog or saying I think somebody's here? Do you remember?
playing with the dog, I'm pretty sure.
Okay, because why would somebody say I think somebody, that's why maybe it is Xana. I feel like that is obviously going to matter. But if it was Kaylee, well, was Kaylee up that whole time then?
Oh, dude, I don't.
Like, it
Okay,
just
so
doesn't make sense. And when you're looking at time of death, I'm curious if there's any science that could be done within the autopsy, or was done, that could make it lean more towards 3 or more towards 4.
so I really hope, hope that the investigators are not as bad as I believe they are going to be based off of what we've seen. I really hope they have some heavy hitter scientist in their ISP team that would know to uh what example, son? But so I would hope that they would know that of the importance um of measuring where those injuries came from, right? And what I mean by that is if they were to be able to determine, let's say they were up on the 3rd floor, and if they were able to determine where at by the bed the perpetrator was standing and how they were able to effectively, damage both of the victims where they were standing at, that could give you a better understanding of how tall they were, because now you have a frame of reference for the height versus the degree and how the weapon was being held to then enact certain injuries to the body. So I've this whole time have been hoping to see science like that, but every time we look back at the crime scene, I'm stuck thinking they couldn't even police tape the crime scene right. You know what I mean? They opened up all the doors on a freezing day, which is literally the worst thing ever, period, for a crime scene. They were carrying evidence without gloves. They were using gloves after they had been dropped on the ground and then scooted over to them with their own shoe. Like, I hope that they, like I said, they have some heavy hitters on their investigative science team that aren't, those people that we saw.
Yeah. It looks like Rasta Four Eyes, it's their birthday today. And
Oh,
they're
that's
a
awesome.
member. Happy birthday, Rasta. I hope you're having a good night and your night's better because you're here with us. I hope
Yes.
you've done something fun for your birthday. Everybody say happy birthday to Rasta.
Yes. All right, ready? We're all gonna say it at once. Ready? One. Wait, on 2 or on 3? On 3?
Yes.
Okay, on 2. On 3.
3.
1, 2, 3. Happy
Happy
birthday!
birthday.
Oh, I heard everybody. I did. Maybe that's just my voices. I
Oh,
don't
I've
know.
been shot at a few times.
Oh, I've literally
I
been
still
shot.
I, I still have not I still can't tell, like, when I'm hearing, okay, for instance, one night at the studio, there were gunshots outside, and I thought it was fireworks, and Brendan was like, "That was a gunshot." And I was like, "Are you sure? I thought that was a firework." And then there were several. It's pretty scary. I actually called the cops and reported it, and cops literally just drove by and did nothing. But then it was a few weeks later and there were fireworks. And I was like, "Oh my God, it's another gunshot." He's like, "Those are fireworks." And I have shot AK-47s. I have shot many different handguns. I have been shot at several different times. And I still can't recognize a gunshot from a firework.
Oh, I can.
I
I can.
cannot.
Yeah.
So it doesn't, for
I'm a gun
me,
person. I love guns.
I grew up shooting guns. I
And
mean,
I've been shot
I have
before. So
family.
like
Yeah, but it doesn't change anything. Like,
I've been shot at probably 10 times.
Why are you trying to brag or something?
No, I'm not
I've
trying
been
to brag.
shot at like 10
We're
times.
talking about like the experience of the background. So like I didn't want to come off as insensitive because I'm talking about people who have been shot at before when I have experience being shot and being shot at. So I'm not trying to be insensitive.
Okay. Well,
That's why I was saying that.
I'm just saying, somebody who grew up, has been hunting, has family who hunts, who grew up shooting guns, who's been shot at, I still cannot recognize the difference. So I think
Yes,
it's
they
also
sound way different.
they don't sound different to
Oh, yeah,
me.
right,
So
dude. You're on a different angle of the gun, so the echo's different. It's not the initial sound, it's the secondary sound. That's how I can tell if it's a gunshot or not, is the secondary sound. The initial pop is different, but, like, the depth of the boom is different.
like
The only time I wouldn't
it,
be able to tell is if it's, like, a pea shooter, like,
well,
a 20.
see, if it were a rifle, like a high-powered rifle, I could tell the difference between that and a firework. But when you're just talking a handgun, I can't tell the difference when it's far away. For whatever
Yeah.
reason, I can't.
I mean, yeah, I gotcha. I can definitely tell.
Maybe it's because nobody ever taught me. I don't really know. But I can tell the difference just cause with a high-powered rifle. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe I just have messed up ears or something.
No, no. I don't think so. I think you remember things you're interested in, you know what I mean?
I was super interested in guns for a while.
Yeah.
I owned a gun
I
for a
was
while.
obsessed with fireworks. I was the kid that if it was fire and it went boom, it was all me. Like, I learned how to make my own fireworks, all kinds of
Maybe you
stuff.
just have more experience with fireworks than me. That's
Maybe,
why.
maybe.
'Cause, like, I don't know. I guess we shot fireworks as a kid, but I definitely didn't build explosives and go crazy the way you did.
Yeah, yeah, but it's definitely not a good thing, like, being around guns in that way and being shot. It's not something I look back on and I'm like, "Oh, man, that was so great." No, no. It's,
Shooting guns was always a really fun experience for me, except for when
it
I went
is fun.
with a high school boyfriend and he taught his little brother to shoot birds. That wasn't such a good
I mean,
experience, but
it's fun. It's fun to feel the power of a weapon for sure.
I
Absolutely.
told him he better eat that bird.
Yeah, yeah. I
I was
grew up
not
with
happy about
hunters
that.
too, and, you have to eat what you shoot if you're a hunter, and yeah, yeah.
I
That I had to eat an animal that wasn't an edible animal because of that.
What was it?
I honestly, I don't remember the type of bird, but I think it was a crow.
Oh,
I think.
ew,
I
that's
think so.
nasty.
Yeah,
Ew.
yeah. But I had, like, a best friend growing up. Then we'll get back into the story. I had a best friend growing up, and we were, like, 13, maybe we were 12. You know what? Don't think we were teenagers yet. Like, we were prepubescent, and, we were in the backyard shooting 20 gauge, shotguns, and we shot, at an animal, and his dad was like, "Nah, that's not okay. You eat what you shoot, otherwise you don't shoot it," and, he cooked it and we had to eat it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I told that little kid to eat the bird, but obviously nobody made him eat the bird, but they ate squirrels for fun, so, I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. I
I
mean,
don't
it
know that
taught
he
me a
woulda
lesson. Look,
cared.
I never shot at anything again. So, that was a lesson learned. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, but yeah, going back into it, like so we have so many intelligent people that watch our show, like so intelligent to where I'm reading our comments section and every day I'm blown away. I am absolutely and totally blown away by the level of thinking and connecting dots and the details that people are bringing to the table. No, it was not a cat. No way. I love cats and dogs. That would never happen. But Now, where was I going with this? Oh, our viewers always bring such great input and information, and so many of those people, I feel like, myself included, so I don't want to put anybody down. I'm also not going to name anybody by name except myself because I am guilty of this. The whole time I've been watching this case, right? And it's been some months, like at least 6 months. I have on multiple occasions been like, what the heck is up with the time of death? Why couldn't they just get it down to like 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour, whatever? And totally just putting down the reliability of the current time of death. Now, after you covered that topic, it helped me understand just the amount of variables in that. The amount is insane.
Yeah, it's not that easy to determine a time of death. I mean, I think the external factors like cell phone data, like witness statements, like, camera footage, those are going to be the things I think that give the better and bigger
Well, not
picture of
eyewitness, but
when, yeah, but all of it together. Like if your eyewitness also confirms things that are solid, like data, like video footage, and they're supporting those facts and there's facts supporting their statement, then it's just win-win. However, I think this comes to like one of our main concerns is, was there any coercion?
yeah,
Because if
I don't want to
the
get too far from the science of like the
okay.
time of death though. And I understand. I'm right there with you. I have such a hard time when we're talking about this, like staying on this because the amount of variables and other details in
Yeah.
this case that have altered the time of death, it's really hard to stay on the science. But when we're just looking at the science specifically, I think that this video, this one right here, and the one we watched before this, should help people understand why the time of death is not going to be concrete.
Yeah.
Why there's no way, even though we would love it to be, unless there's some science out there that we just couldn't figure out, you weren't able to track down something like that. But that's like leading edge
Well,
technology, you
yeah,
know?
there is leading edge technology in determining times of death, but like I said, they're not completely practical yet.
Right, right, right.
So I did see somebody who kept coming into the comments like a long time ago, it was a few months ago, mentioning some kind of science that could determine it down to a 45-minute time span or something like that. Now, I couldn't find those numbers that they were talking about. Um, but I was trying to find whatever science they were talking about. And while I think I found it, again, it doesn't seem like something that's being actively used in autopsies by medical examiners. These are like
Do you
new
know
forms
why?
of tech and science that they are trying to, because it takes a while for something new to catch on. They have to make
Yeah,
sure it works. It's
exactly.
trial by error.
Now think of the sheath in Texas.
What about it?
They have to figure out how it works. They've never used that technology through Texas on an active investigation. So that is, in my opinion, and see there, I'm guilty of it. I went somewhere else, but that is why I think they want to leave Texas out of this equation.
Well, you know what's also really interesting, is that IgG has been able to be done in Idaho state labs for since before this crime, and I didn't know that.
Yeah, but
So now knowing that state labs in Idaho can do IgG, now who knows how far along they are, but they got a bunch of money to be able to do it, several years ago, like a few years before this crime ever happened. Um, it's interesting to know that they have those capabilities, but still outsourced.
it's interesting to know. Yep. And it makes me want to dig in why. Because if you have the technology and you got the financial backing to create a system where you could do IgG in that state, then why was it sent to Texas? You know, and without getting too far into that. But
hold on, so Sun said, do you guys know that the requirements for medical examiners / coroners are in Idaho, like what they are? They are shockingly low in some places, sometimes don't even require a medical degree.
You covered that.
Now coroners, you are right. Like coroner Kathy Mabba is a lawyer and a registered nurse or something like that.
Yeah.
That is pretty normal for coroners, actually. Now, some areas they require a little more, but typically you don't have to have a medical degree to be a coroner. Medical examiners are a totally different thing. They are the ones who actually conduct like the science.
Yeah.
The coroner at least in Moscow, is an elected position, and she is there to determine the legal time of death, nothing based on science. She is there to draw up death certificates and legally declare someone dead. And she, helps oversee transport of the bodies, and assisting in the autopsy, and the evidence and all that stuff. That's her job. Her job is not to do autopsies or determine a physiological, like actual body, when the body passes time of death. Her role is strictly legal.
Yeah. And I know you have brought that up before, and it's really interesting. That's really interesting. And I think that's why they outsource to Washington,
Yeah,
to get proper medical examination.
Right, because I don't think they have those capabilities. And even if they did have those capabilities anywhere nearby, I think that probably Spokane was the best place. That's the place they send these like bodies from these types of crimes, because they're forensics when it comes to so there's a difference between autopsies. There's forensic autopsies, and then I think it's medical autopsies. Forensic ones are obviously for people who they have questions around their death. As far as a crime. Medical autopsies are like someone who passed away in hospital and there's no suspicion around their death whatsoever, but they want to see exactly what happened in the body, what went wrong. So I am guessing the place in Spokane that they sent these bodies was the best place to send them in the area for a forensic autopsy.
Yeah. No, I think so. And just the amount of variables when trying to track down the time of death is such a big deal. And it makes me immediately go back to the technology in the house. There is these are college kids. The level of technology that these kids had, I'm sure, is absolutely insane. And it makes me wonder if that's where you're going to get your true time of death, is in the technology. Yep.
I wonder that too. And I'm really curious. You guys are our, eyes and ears when it comes to, anything in this case. Have any of you seen any of the victims wearing a Fitbit or an Apple Watch?
To be honest, I've never looked.
I haven't either.
Yep. Never looked.
I have not either, but I'm super curious if any of them regularly wore one, because, I wear one. While I don't wear it all the time, I do wear it like I get palpitations and stuff, and I check it, and it does a pretty good job of constantly keeping track of your heart rate, if you're moving.
Oh, it does an awesome job. Yeah.
It's incredible technology. There's even cardiologists now who recommend people who have, heart conditions to wear them.
Absolutely 100%. Yeah. And I believe wholeheartedly in the tech side of things and being able to identify quite a bit with the tech, on the tech side of things. But yeah, it blows my mind about that time of death. I think that would explain everything, or explain everything.
Kaylee had
to determine
Apple Watch.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. And the question lies in that. Now, going back to Kathy Mabbutt, what was the question that she answered in that interview that was really strange? Wasn't it about time of death? Didn't they ask her directly? Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't they ask her directly? And she said, I believe the police have determined that it's from this time to this time.
I know that she was the one going around giving a time frame of like 3 to 5. I'm pretty sure that was the time frame that she initially gave. Which is why people started questioning, like, why did it change? You know, I actually don't feel like the time of the crime, the only way that would become a major deal to me is if there's something that they're saying for this crime to have happened and Bryan Kohberger to be the guy, this had to have happened at this time. And therefore, if it didn't happen at that time, it's not possible for him to be the suspect. That's the only way it will matter. But as far as in the beginning, we hear this time frame of like anywhere from like it was either 2 to 5 or 3 to 5. And then over time it narrows down. That's exactly what I would expect, you guys. I would expect it to narrow down as they get more evidence. That makes sense because at first they're just looking at the bodies, like, and it's not super detailed. They're, taking the witness statements and they're giving this range of time on it. And that makes sense. They narrowed it down. Like, for me, that's not a super big red flag anymore because I understand it better.
It kind of is for me because I expect my time of death to be determined through science, right? And
Yep.
look, let's say they determined the time of death through the TikTok app, through a video, then Kathy Mabbitt would be able to say, yes, my science and testing supports that the time of death was between this time and this time. When you're a coroner, I think it's a very strange statement to like pass the buck over to the police who are not trained on those techniques. I don't know, it just felt strange for me. It felt not authentic.
I mean, I think I
And
don't
shout out Annie, in 4 days will be 6 months of membership. That is
Annie.
incredible and we appreciate you.
And I posted I'm not sure if you commented on it because I need to go check, but I posted
And Mike,
a community post for members, both of you,
4
for
months.
looking to see for member badges because we have the newbie badge, which is the lightning bolt. We have the first month badge, which is the oh my gosh, I'm blanking. It's the light bulb. And then isn't it 2 month? Yeah, it's 2 month badge. That is the thought bubble that says riot in it. The next jump
Yeah, it's right there.
the next jump is 6 months. Could you zoom in?
Yeah. So
The
a
next
lot of people have left a lot of comments on this. You just need to go in there and read them.
Okay, yeah, and I'm gonna cast a poll on some of the things you guys suggested. But if I just want to say, Mike and Anne, if you guys haven't left, your ideas and you want to, definitely do it because I'm gonna go through it tonight. But I'm excited to see what all the comments were.
Yes, and shout out to Mike, also 4 months. That's incredible. That is incredible.
That's okay. If you don't have any ideas or whatever, that's cool too. I just want you can vote, on other people's ideas and be a part of it that way.
That's what we should do is we should post it like
I'm going to.
for a poll. Yeah.
That's what it says in the post. Is
I like the
I'm
white
gonna
rabbit and the cult like signs.
I'm gonna take all of the ideas everyone gave and then like pick, for each month which ones,
yeah.
and then everybody can vote on them.
Okay, so what were we just talking about?
What?
What were we just talking about?
Kathy Mabbitt?
Yeah, that's right. But yeah, maybe that's not a big sign for you, but for me, based off my experience of reading body language, it was In the interview, I personally believe this is very subjective and biased to my personal opinion, but I believe that she was like, "Whoop, I need to make sure and check myself and make sure my answer matches what the investigation is saying it is." And for me, anytime I see something like that, that's just a red flag because in my opinion, the best evidence is blind testing. You don't do your science to match your investigation.
I want to bring
You
something
do
up
your
with that.
science and then compare notes after the fact.
So Anne, I'm sorry to hear you were in the hospital, but please, if you want to contribute, definitely do. We'd love to hear from you. And of course, Charcoal Daisy, you're always welcome. But I wanted to say, so blind
She appeared
testing,
nervous.
blind, yeah, she did seem like a mess. Okay. That interview was definitely a mess. I'm not sure how I feel about it. And when looking at her and some of the other things, those are red flags to me, sure. But just the time of death narrowing down wasn't. Now, them saying it was between 3 to 4 and then changing it after 4, I guess that's
Shady.
yeah, it's
Like
weird.
shady because we see other changes and those changes can be
Like the car.
linearly connected to create a narrative. Now, I'm not saying that it's not common to have something in an investigation change. I think it's very common and I think it's completely okay. And it's completely okay when you explain, look, we believed it was this because of this. Now we believe it's this because of this, right? And then it
But they
makes
never
sense. 1 plus
explain.
1 equals 2, whatever. But in this case, we have a systematic changing of a car and the time frame of that car being there, then the time of the crime, and that is a major concern. It's a major concern because we have officers that were caught doing this in the Dr. Moore case that were leading this investigation in the Idaho 4. It's a major concern because if they're looking at this case through, a keyhole in the door, they're going to miss everything else that's going on around the room. It's a
Yeah.
concern because that's not going to create real justice in this case. It's a concern because there is going to be a crazy killer out there with the ability to do it again.
Yeah.
Like these are very severe if they don't get this right, the possibility of people losing their lives is high.
Yeah, no, it will happen again. It will. It's
So
not there's no doubt it will
there's no
happen again.
room for mistakes.
If Bryan Kohberger is not the guy. But one more comment I just want to mention real quick because it's a super good comment and I think it's a good point and it adds to the conversation. Ian said there's still the problem of lab shopping. Scientists might not be biased, but LE could just be going around until they find somebody whose results match what LE wants. That yeah, you're right. It could be a reason they hid Texas. So I just the FBI and Othram have a very cozy relationship, you guys. And I'm not trying to necessarily implicate the FBI in this. I know Brendan really doesn't believe the FBI had anything to do with it, and that the FBI being a part of it is actually like less of a red flag, that they would make sure things are done right. I don't know how much I agree with that because I don't know how much the FBI would hold another jurisdiction accountable because they're not the lead on the case. But it doesn't change that cozy relationships, like say, ISP, the FBI come in on this investigation with MPD, and just like the fog data science, say FBI has a fog data science subscription, so MPD gets access to that. Say the FBI has a really cozy relationship with Othram, and Othram is known to the FBI for getting them, that guy that they need for a conviction. So they send it that way. Did somebody accompany the knife sheath to the lab? Was it a blind test where the people conducting the test didn't know who the suspect was? Did they know who Bryan Kohberger was before they tested the knife sheath? Those are important questions to me. Really important questions to me. But well, where was I going? I meant to bring up, so I want to talk about this with Brendan here, so maybe I'll wait a minute. But I wanted to talk about the autopsy. I'm curious your guys' thoughts on frame ups, okay? Like a frame job. So I heard some argument earlier today that there is no such thing as an unintentional framing. Now, I've been of the mind for a while here, you guys have probably heard me say it a ton of times, that is frame jobs don't have to be intentional. That police officers, and me and Brennan have argued this a ton, and we both feel the same about it, is that investigators could get tunnel vision. Like, say they get a tip on Bryan Kohberger, okay? Because we know that they did. They got a tip on his car from that guy that went out looking for Hyundai Elantras. He found one 20 minutes later, and it was Bryan Kohberger's. Say they get that tip, and they also get another tip from somewhere else, like, I don't know, somebody at the school, like that professor that had a problem with him. And maybe somewhere else, I don't know. Maybe they get a few tips and then they realize, well, he drives the car, a white sedan, a car that we've seen driving around during the time of the crime. And they're like, it literally has to be him. Look at the time of day this is. I mean, how many white sedans are out? He's a single guy. He lives alone. He was out that night. It has to be him. So because the investigators really believe that it has to be him, there's no other suspect. There's no way, that it's anybody else. And I heavily believe in human psychology. Like when you really believe something is it, that you can do things subconsciously that make it be that, confirming your own bias subconsciously and making things move to where everything fits in with that narrative. I just really wonder, I just really wonder what you guys think about that. Like, do you think tunnel vision is a real thing and somebody can be framed because the investigators really believe, even if it's not the truth, that it is that person, so they're subconsciously, unintentionally making everything fit? Maybe even in some situations they're making things fit intentionally, but they really believe it's the guy. So they're not unintentionally, like they're not intentionally framing an innocent man. They're unintentionally doing it because they really believe he's the guy. Even if they did some things wrong and corrupt, they're not trying to frame who they deem an innocent man. They see him as guilty.
Look at that. I think you're starting to come over to my side with everyone believes they're doing the right thing.
No, I don't think that. But I do think that's possible.
Yeah, I think that's most likely is there's ulterior motives that don't have anything to do with the suspect in a lot of these cases.
So
wrong place,
that's
wrong time.
that's the argument that I was hearing being made, CH, is that, well, that's not framing, that's just tunnel vision. Framing is always intentional. I don't know if I agree with that, because framing somebody is altering evidence to make that person guilty in a court of law.
Think of the definition. Like, think of the definition. The reason why it's called framing is because you're framing the evidence to fit in the way that you want it to be framed. You know what I mean? To create an image and a picture of what you want.
Exactly.
So, yeah, no, I agree. I agree with that 100%. I think there can be unintentional framing. And I don't know why. I'm sitting here trying to think in my head for a second of, okay, well, what would you call it? Because you wouldn't call it an accident because the cop is still doing something wrong. So there would still need to be, some sort of negative connotation behind the definition of whatever that police officer is doing. It's an action that needs to be corrected. It needs to be fixed in some kind of way. Whereas, where it's still framing, like you're still setting up the wrong person in these situations,
So
you know?
if they alter evidence, it is framing. But in cases of tunnel vision, don't they usually alter evidence by, say, coercing the suspect to confess? That's altering evidence.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I get where we're going now. So one, yeah. I got you. There's
Or
also a couple different.
only
Okay.
focusing on evidence that
Yeah.
points to their narrative and then ignoring all exculpatory evidence, say other DNA
Yeah.
at the scene, other videos of other cars there,
Right.
ignoring all
Yeah.
of that and only looking at this person, that that
Yeah.
still
I
to me
got you.
classifies as framing somebody.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I agree. I agree. I agree. It's just going to come down to a preference and definition, really, right? And it doesn't really matter whatever you call it. I think that it would be nice to be able to have a definition, and it would, allow for additional change to happen in situations like these, and it would give people a better understanding of how it happens in these situations. But yeah, I think it can be intentionally or unintentionally done around any suspect. It doesn't matter who the suspect is. And I think it can be intentionally or unintentionally done without them knowing they're the suspect, you know? Confirmation bias. Yeah. Yep.
So I also wanted to bring up the autopsy because um of the officers that were there, and this is something I want to look
I
a bit
know.
more into.
Drives
Um,
me
it
crazy.
kind of drives me crazy that the Dr. Moore case is still so discounted by a lot of people. Because if you just read the document, like he the officers
You
involved
well,
threatened an alibi witness. He had an alibi and they threatened that
you know what's
witness.
interesting
They
is that
changed timestamps. They coerced him and totally violated his Miranda rights and did many things. They even stalked him after he was exonerated. It
yeah.
is
And
not it is straight up a frame job.
yeah, what's interesting is one, those documents are actually kind of hard to find. So if you just pull up Google and you start hitting that Google search bar and you're searching Dr. Moore, you're gonna find all the court documents that weren't used. I don't know why it's like that, but there is one in particular that is the actual breakdown, and it's an official court document, and it is the lawsuit that's being brought against Bonner's Ferry. All right, and that is the entire story of Dr. Moore from start to finish. And there are look, I want to approach this carefully because I know there are people out there that think it's possible that that this didn't happen to Dr. Moore. So I don't want anyone to get offended because I believe what I believe, but I don't understand how you could read the Dr. Moore case, the details in it, and the factual evidence, the objective data, like finding him on the ground in his office, all these things, um, and not see how it's a total and complete setup by dirty police. Like, I don't understand how you can read that document and not see that.
Yeah, I
I
don't
don't
either.
get it. The only way that Dr. Moore could be guilty if if the now mayor of that town was in on it with him because they were together. That is the only reason. But interesting, from the video footage, there's only one person. That is literally the only other possibility, which it's not even a possibility because they proved 100%, not kind of, they proved 100% that the timestamps were altered on the video footage trying to prove Dr. Moore was in the area. The interesting thing, though, is that they pressed Dr. Moore. They chose to ignore him asking for a lawyer 9 times, more than 9 times. I think it was 11. It was 9 confirmed with 2 like times. And forced him to confess because they said that if you didn't confess, you were going to get murder 1 and the death penalty. If you confessed, we'll give you murder 2 and you'll be able to live, right? So they literally coerced and forced him into confessing. So they didn't have to submit the evidence that they altered and changed the timestamps on. I just don't understand how you could read that and not see the fraudulence.
You got me. I don't know. Because I mean, we read through the case documents. There's even more documents out there now. It's like it's undeniable. The only way I feel like you could not see it is bias.
Yeah, which is something we're all guilty of, literally all of us,
Yeah.
everybody. It's something that it's called the human condition, right? I haven't talked about the human condition in quite a while, but when we first started covering true crime, I talked about it quite a bit where, there are these inherent behaviors in us humans that we have to constantly fight against. And one of them is bias. And the only way to do that is to, well, at least for myself, is to understand that everything I look at is going to be biased. So how do I figure out my bias in any situation? At least understanding it and identifying it gives you a more objective
Bias
vision.
is literally built into us. It's a survival mechanism.
Yeah.
We have to be able to judge situations quickly. Like if something is a threat to our survival, that's what bias is for. It's for identifying threats. It's for keeping yourself safe. Like if I touch a hot stove and every time it burns me, well, I got bias against stoves now. I'm not touching a hot stove. Like
Yeah.
it's just built into us. But we are intelligent. We have consciousness. We can ask ourselves and self-reflect and say, is this bias justified? Is it benefiting me in any way? Is it preventing me from being objective and looking at the totality of the facts and seeing the true clear picture outside of like my own human experience?
Yeah. No, I agree.
Because
I
this goes
agree.
back to what I was talking about the other night is like, I don't understand asking why Kohberger? If they're framing somebody, why Kohberger? If
You literally read my mind.
you
I was
know,
just about to say that.
why would the cops risk their whole career to do this? Like, why would ISP go along with MPD if MPD was trying to frame this man? Like, why? I don't think that matters.
No, I don't.
I don't think looking at it that subjectively disproves the possibility of it happening, because the fact of the matter is it does happen. I'm not trying to prove Bryan Kohberger's innocent. He very well may be the guy. He's innocent till proven guilty. So far, the evidence is not weighing in the prosecution's favor unless you're looking at it surface level and you're not like, the only way this evidence is going to stand up to the test in trial is if they have a lot more supporting evidence that backs these up and makes them fact.
Yeah, I agree with you. And one thing I was going to bring up too is the major common factor in all of these cases right now is Officer Tolson, which I saw that you mentioned his name, Heather, and I appreciate that. So Officer Tolson was one of the 2 people that were actively involved in the Dr. Moore case and were actively involved in changing the timestamps on the video footage. Tolson was also actively involved in the Idaho 4 case. He has a connection in Bonners Ferry with Officer Payne, who is half owner of a meat locker in the Bonners Ferry area. All right. So it would make sense why when Officer Payne is given the lead investigator role, he's like, oh yeah, we're going to get ISP's help. Let me call it my buddy. You know what I mean? Officer Tolson. Once you get Tolson involved, Tolson had his hands literally all over this entire case, all over the entire thing, to the point, like what you were saying earlier, where Officer Tolson was going to the autopsies, and the medical examiner says in a statement that all the information and details and evidence were taken by the officers from this autopsy. Okay, well, can we get a list of that to know what that evidence was that you handed over to these officers, so that we know that we can track and have chain of custody to make sure that all of it's still there? That's important, because when we go all the way back to the Dr. Moore case, Tolson, like I just said, was proven as walking all over Dr. Moore's human rights from start to finish. Not to mention, there could be some very scary implications in that case that police could be a part of, but could maybe just be, victim of circumstance, where a gas pipe was loosened in an office. Like, can you imagine if there was some kind of evidence that the police officers were behind that situation with Dr. Moore? And if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, while Dr. Moore was being investigated, he ended up passing out in his office because a gas pipe was loosened when the not a plumber, the gas, whatever, a gas expert, gas technician came out. The gas technician said that was loosened by hand.
That's crazy.
Right. So what are the possibilities there? You know what I mean? Because what people didn't take into account, for one, that is such an uncommon way for somebody to take their own life, right? For two, we believe that it was loosened up for a couple of days because people in the office left statements saying that they were having headaches all week leading up to it.
It's pretty scary.
Yep. Then he went in on a Saturday after it had been closed in there for a long time to grab some paperwork or whatever. He passed out, but the gas wasn't on the bottom floor, so he was like on the bottom part of the room or whatever. So he was passed out, and his friend, who is now the mayor, or I think he's mayor. I know he was running for mayor. I don't remember if he got it or not, but he stopped by because they're friends and found him on the ground. So I can only think of one of two options there. It's either the two police that chose to betray their badge and fraudulently manipulate the investigation to make it look like Dr. Moore, even though there was eyewitness testimony and statement, not one, not two, but 4 eyewitnesses that identified the shooter as a younger person, different colored hair, the ability to run. Dr. Moore can't run. He had an injury to his leg, so literally impossible to run. And at a different time and place than Dr. Moore. All those were hidden. Like, these dudes went to great lengths to set Dr. Moore up. That's why I was saying what I was saying earlier, that for those of you that don't know much about the Dr. Moore case, like, go back and check our videos. If you click on the Idaho 4 playlist, you can find it in there. There's a Dr. Moore part 1 and a Dr. Moore part 2. You need to listen to that and remember that this officer was heavily involved in the Idaho 4 case.
He oversaw the autopsies. Now,
not just that, he also oversaw a majority of the interviews.
Well, I know that Ann Taylor in a court hearing was mentioning the involvement of the 3 training records that she was requesting. She did not mention what jurisdiction they came from, whether it was MPD or ISP, but she did mention their roles in the case. And by all accounts, it sounds like they handled evidence, they did interviews, like they did very vital things. Like, if they're handling and bagging evidence and interviewing witnesses and like overseeing autopsies, that matters.
It does matter. It does matter. All right. And I'm just going to take a second here for anybody that has joined the chat. Welcome, welcome. We're super stoked to have you here at the True Crime Talk Show. Make sure you hit that thumbs up button. Make sure you leave a comment in the comment section, not the chat. Those are 2 free things that you can do that go a very, 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 very long way in helping the show expand and get bigger and get to a full-time place. We would appreciate that a ton. And yeah, so hit that thumbs up, leave a comment in the comment section, and we still respond to every single comment, you guys. One other thing for anybody new that's come in here, the one rule of the chat is we want everybody to have their own opinion. We want people that believe Bryan Kohberger's guilty in here. We want people that believe he is innocent in here. We want people in here that don't know. We can share our opinions and have adult conversations without being disrespectful. So please, please, please make sure you're being I almost said make sure you're being disrespectful.
Oh, please
make sure
do.
You're being respectful in the chat to everybody, and just keep in mind that over chat you can't hear tone, you can't see body language, so different people are going to take different things. So when in doubt, just side with the overly sure. You're going to be respectful and it will be taken respectfully, and yeah, we appreciate that.
So I wanted to ask something. So was ISP there on scene the first day of the crime? The first day they discovered. Okay. In the PCA, it says the Idaho State Police forensic team was on scene and preparing to begin processing the scene when Blaker and Payne arrived. Now, is there any evidence to support that it was only the forensic team and no officers? Would that even make sense?
I believe I saw pictures of ISP officers the first day. So I have a whole bunch of photos from the first day there, like a whole bunch of photos. And there are quite a few ISP officers. Quite a few ISP officers. So I don't think it was only...
Well, by all accounts, it appears that ISP was on scene before Payne was on scene.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, I know. But remember, so ISP is like subcontracted out of all these different police departments across Idaho. That's why you have ISP officers involved in the Dr. Moore case out of Bonners Ferry. I think that it's very likely that there were some ISP officers very close to there. I think it would be more unlikely not to have ISP officers close to there. So, yeah, I mean, interesting. It's interesting, right?
Yeah, it is interesting. And thank you, Patty.
Has there been
She said she loves Malia. Thank you.
Oh, that is awesome. Has anybody ever heard of an explanation as to why it took him that long? Does anybody know? For Payne.
So I thought I heard he was out of town. That's what I heard, but I have no idea.
Like how far out of town?
I don't know, but from what Chris McDonough said at the interview room, he said that is not acceptable to be that late to a crime scene. Not acceptable.
I mean, if he's on vacation, okay, gotcha.
Then why pick him as lead on the case? Someone who has
agreed.
probably the least amount of experience to be the lead of the case, and someone who's out of town. Like, why him?
I agree. I don't understand. I don't know. They literally put at risk the entire investigation to put him as the lead investigator. I don't understand it. I don't understand it. I don't see there being any benefit whatsoever. I don't see any gain.
So he was out of town hunting. He went home to get his uniform, and that took him 4 hours. How far away was he when he was hunting?
Yeah, that would be my next question
But
is
again, why pick him if he is the most inconvenient pick?
yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I feel like there could have been a statement. I think that whoever was on scene just should have took control of the scene. Period. You know what I mean? I don't think that's not some wild theory or some amazing concept. They should have controlled the scene. Doesn't matter who it is, right? When you're a police officer, you're trained to control the scene. So, regardless of whatever mistakes were done, it's interesting that that the crime scene was handled so poorly. It's interesting that nobody found the knife until he got there. It's interesting that he was confirmed as the lead investigator so quickly into the case, knowing he was so far away, you know?
I wonder if Payne has taken some special, like, so for instance, in Illinois, to be the lead investigator of a homicide investigation, you have to take specialized training.
Yeah.
And I assume it is very similar in other jurisdictions that you have to be trained to do that because it is a special position. You got to know your stuff. Maybe he took that training and that's why he was
Dude,
picked. And maybe he was one of the only ones on the force that had taken that training. Um, I don't
sales
know.
sales is a great example here.
Sales is always a
Training,
great example.
yeah, it's what I'm gonna pull it from my life experience, right? So, training is not experience. In any case, in any situation, training does not equal experience.
I agree with you.
I don't care who you are, what kind of industry you're in, what kind of people manager you are, but training never equals experience. I have hired hundreds of salespeople. I have managed hundreds of people before. And every single time you have a green person, which is what you call new salespeople, they go to training. Your training could be 2 weeks long, it could be 6 weeks long, it could be 12 weeks long, it could be 6 months long. It doesn't matter. When they come out of training, they are a deer in headlights because training doesn't equal experience.
Yeah, I would think it would make more sense to put someone who's fresh like that, who's just taken training, make them the second on the case for a few cases before they
I
become the first. Now, that goes back to their experience and the fact that they didn't have the experience. So maybe they don't have, even if they have senior officers who have a ton of experience policing in that town, they may not have a ton of experience in homicide investigation because it rarely happens in this area. And most of the homicides, or well, I can't say homicides, most of the deaths in this area have been ruled not to be homicides. Like all of them are accidental, even if they appear suspicious. So I mean, maybe that's why.
Yeah, to the benefit of the school
Yeah.
because that metric is so important, the amount of homicides.
But it goes back to the ineptitude. Now, even if we're arguing that MPD is doesn't have good experience, okay? They aren't going to do a good job on a case like this because they have such little experience. What is ISP's excuse? Let me ask you that, because as we know, as we read from the PCA, that the crime scene lab from ISP was on scene before the lead investigator, Payne, was there. They were there first. They are the ones who taped off the crime scene. ISP should be very experienced because they cover way bigger jurisdictions. They're going to have way more experience in homicide investigations and assisting in homicide investigations. So why did ISP handle the crime scene so badly by only taping off the home, not taking that
well,
jacket,
I don't know
not
if that
taking
was
that glove?
ISP that did the first taping. Because remember, there were two tapings. in the same day. So the first one was the one that's tied to the ladder and literally just around the walls of the home. And then as ISP got there, they expanded it out a little bit, barely, to the property line or whatever. But that's after multiple police officers had been there and multiple people had been all up in that scene. And that's one of our biggest concerns when we're looking at this crime scene and whether it has any reliability whatsoever.
Right.
I just don't know why. I have a hard time understanding why they wanted to keep it in-house. That's another big point of contention that makes me feel like there was something else to it, right? Because this is not like this is one of the biggest cases in the world right now, period. And the expectation would be to hand it off to ISP. Why wasn't it handed off to ISP? Why was ISP just included, but it was kept as a Moscow case?
Hmm.
You know?
I assume because that's where it happened. And you know one thing that I wanted to mention, which I maybe this will help bring some perspective,
Mhm.
but I actually just watched Crime Fix on Law and Crime before we hopped on here. It's Anjanette Levy, and she had that Natalie Lawyer chick
Yeah, yeah.
or whatever.
Mhm.
Like I can't remember her
Yeah, yeah,
exact
yeah.
name.
It is
Um,
Natalie Lawyer Chick. She's awesome. Yep.
yeah, well, she was on there, and, Anjanette Levy, I think, may have asked this question, like, Bill Thompson said in the recent court hearing, which I don't know why I didn't call this out or didn't I don't know why I don't even remember it, but he said, the people, like, when talking about this motion to move venue, to transfer venues, he said that the people of Moscow deserve to have this case here. And the defense attorney who thought
Absurd.
the defense attorney that they had on that was pretty experienced. He's an older man. He is okay with the case staying in Moscow. Natalie, lawyer chick, was different. She thought it should be moved,
I
and that
agree.
it will be moved. The other guy thought it won't, and it doesn't necessarily need to be. But both of them took major issue with that statement. They were like, that's just like inappropriate. Like, I would never say that. The people of Moscow, he said, I've done tons of these kinds of trials. He said, never have I considered the jury members as a party to the case.
Right.
Like
Right.
they matter. Like it is
Right.
Bryan Kohberger's case.
Yeah.
This it has
Correct.
they don't deserve anything other than
No.
like justice. Like
Yeah.
and
To be safe.
it being there in that town is not owed to them.
No, it's not.
That
It's not.
I don't know why that didn't strike me, or I honestly, 'cause I don't even remember that being said. Maybe I misheard him, but that's
Yeah.
disgusting, you guys, saying that they deserve it to be in this town. Why? Because of profit or something?
Yeah.
Like,
I don't
why?
know.
Because that like, I just don't understand him making that statement.
No,
Why would Bill Thompson say
yeah,
that?
it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It literally makes no sense. Why? Because it's a vengeance situation. Like that's what it sounds like is vengeance.
Yeah, we
Like
need to be the ones to put him to death.
right, right. Exactly my point. And I think that there is a major unfair bias in this town. The entire town is dependent on this school, literally dependent. When Scott Green says jump, everyone jumps. And I understand it. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with it. He is the president of the university, and half of the people in that town depend on that for their family's welfare, right? So it makes sense. If you guys work at a job, like you work together respectfully, confidently with your leaders, with your bosses above you, right?
Right.
So he runs that town, whether it's literal or not. He is the leader of that school. That school runs that town. If you were to pick up that college and move it to California, there would be no town anymore. Therefore, everybody in there is biased because you have the president who put out a book who essentially suggests Bryan Kohberger is guilty in that book, and is actively fighting against any possibility of there being any other suspect looked at. So, all they're doing, if they keep it there, is he will 100% get a retrial. I think anybody else would look at these things and say, "Ooh,
Well, he made some
tough
he
decisions."
made some interesting arguments that I was like, I could see that, I guess. So he said, even though the population is small, he said, I used to try cases, and he's talking about his experience of these kinds of trials, but back then we would have them within 3 to 4 months. He said, now you're lucky to have it in 2 years.
Yeah.
He said, back then the headlines would be everywhere, and you are going to trial in 3 to 4 months. And that makes it way harder to have an unbiased jury because the amount of time, like years passing, helps people, I guess,
Yeah.
forget details.
Yeah.
But I mean, with this case, not going to happen. That's not going to matter. Time, as there could be 5 years past, you guys, and I think this case will still be super important to a lot of people. I don't know about the people in that town per se, but what he was saying is that he was shocked at the jury members they would get and ask questions to, and they would say, "Well, no, I remember that crime happened, but I don't watch the news, or I don't trust the news. I don't trust a word that comes out of the news." And Anjanette Levy was like, it's kind of a knife to the heart when people say that. I mean, it's the truth. It is the truth. I didn't think about that aspect, is that a lot of the population does not trust the news anymore. A lot of the population doesn't watch the news because it's all fear tactics, and you walk away feeling anxious and not very happy.
That's why shows like ours are gaining steam, because we have chosen to take the politics out of these stories and the fear tactics out of these stories and just present the news unbiased, the crime news specifically. So I agree with you. And I think the evidence shows the interest in these shows. So yeah.
I mean, as long as the right questions are asked, jurors don't lie, and there's checks and balances to make sure that if they're lying, they can try to figure that out before, a verdict is reached.
There is
I think that it might be okay if it's in Moscow, but I really do think it should be moved.
no way. There is no
Or
way.
or they should do the jury that's flown in.
I don't think there is any way, shape, or form it is a fair jury out of Moscow.
I don't know.
That is absurd to try.
What if there's people in Moscow who literally don't care?
It doesn't matter. The monetary gains of that school and the dependency on the school's income creates a monetary bias. It doesn't matter if they think that there's a possibility it might not be Kohberger. It doesn't matter if they think that for sure 100% Kohberger is guilty. None of that matters, because they depend on what the school is offering financially to keep their family afloat. So knowing what the school wants is going to immediately bias that jury. And Scott Green came out and shared what the school believes.
I think I am too far over. Did the chair get scooted or something?
No, you're not too far.
I was like cut off on the screen. Jeff just mentioned it in the chat, which thank you. I was kind of far over.
I have a line here. Look, that line is center.
So can I scoot over?
Yeah.
Okay.
That line is center. So right here is that's why that line's there. That's the center of the stage.
Oh, thank you, Jeff.
All right, I gotta go to the bathroom again. Too much caffeine. Ugh.
I try to pay attention, but it gets hard because I also have a very hard time focusing. But here, let's see what you guys are talking about. How many of you agree with Brendan that there's no way Bryan Kohberger gets a fair trial with, citizens of Moscow being in the jury? I understood that guy's argument because I mean, I relate to it. Like, I don't know if I ever told you guys this, but when I was a kid, I used to get severe anxiety every time I just heard the music, the background music of the news. I remember it. Like, I would get intense anxiety and fear, and I would just need to get away from it. And I was pretty young when that started happening. And I didn't understand it. For me as a kid, like, I had no idea why I felt that way. It was subconscious. I wasn't consciously thinking about it. I just knew every time I heard that music, I was like, I need to run away. Like, I don't want to hear that. Um, but I think that is how it is for a lot of people now. Is the news just isn't something you want to watch. But I also understand not having jury from Moscow. I do think it's a small community. There's a lot of interconnectedness, as Ann Taylor put in her motion, and incentive, I don't know. And I think that the subconscious is more powerful than people give it credit for. And what, the rumors, the local news, like all these things people are hearing and reading in headlines, it all files away somewhere in your subconscious and you don't even realize it.
And the faster it's over, the quicker they get to go back to normal lives too. That's
True.
another bias that we didn't even look into is would this jury want this to continue in their area? It's so small that highly unlikely, right? Highly
Mhm.
unlikely, in my opinion. Yeah,
Yeah,
I do it every time.
a lot of people agree with you because I was asking them
I'm
if they
never
agreed
right.
with you or me on that, which I tend to agree with you too. But
Don't agree with me.
I see the
Undercommit,
argument.
over deliver. All right.
Oh, the plastic pants man is back. We all know your secret identity. Is Plastic Pants your superhero name or your alias?
Oh, plastic pants are pretty cool.
Yeah, I have plastic pants.
Yeah. Yeah. I have rubber.
I got those too.
Yeah. The subconscious is 93%. Yeah. That's why again, going back to sales, body language is so important, you guys. Tonality in the way that I'm speaking, so important, you guys.
Yeah,
That's
you
why they
guys.
suggest to people in sales that every day you stand in front of a mirror and you sell to yourself so you can understand that.
Yeah, Bryan Kohberger's eyes look totally freaky in a lot of the pictures, but because
Probably because they're
be,
edited.
because I am constantly looking at pictures, because we're, on YouTube and we're creating thumbnails and we're editing and I'm constantly going through them. His eyes are not nearly as creepy in the pictures that aren't edited.
Well, of
When
course.
you see
The editing's shady.
the editing is shady.
I
It's super
know.
messed up how much they enhance his eyes and make them look so creepy. It's messed up. And that's all about the subconscious. You guys,
I can't help it.
mainstream media, they've got it down to a science. And I think that there are plenty of people who realize that. Some people don't realize the extent of it. Like, they are marketing and subconscious manipulating masters.
Yeah. Yeah.
Masters.
Well,
So just that enhancement of the eyes changes people's perspective of him significantly. How many times have you heard Nancy Grace or anybody who is sold on him being the guy mention his creepy eyes?
Okay, but here's the
like
thing.
that's evidence.
This is something to remember, and this is why, again, shows like ours are really popular, is mainstream news is not looking to give you the facts objectively. Mainstream news is looking to give you a story that is hard to not watch.
Right.
They don't care if
They're
it's
a
a hate
business.
watch. They don't care if it's a positive watch and viewing experience. They will do whatever is most likely to keep you tuned in. So, interesting, right? Interesting. And it gets overwhelming. It becomes overwhelming.
Oh, when I pause the video, I find terrible pauses of myself. I decided not to care about it because I did see people suggesting like always hold yourself this way and make sure that you're like so that when people pause it, you're not like, you know, but like then I can't be animated. Then I have to be perfectly prim and proper the whole time and not move my face too many ways or my hands too many ways. And I'm just not willing to put that much effort into it.
Yeah.
I try not to look like this.
Yeah.
But
yeah, that's my biggest thing is I slouch. I'm always a sloucher in anything I'm doing. When I'm on here,
I've been trying to fix my posture just for like my own well-being for a while now.
Yeah. At the 30-minute mark, make sure anybody that's new on here that has joined, welcome. Super, 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 super happy to have you here. Welcome to the True Crime Talk Show, the one and only. Hit that like button, leave us a comment. That is something free that you could do that goes a super long way, and we appreciate you for it. Thank you. All right. So, yeah.
Well, I don't know if Bryce, I don't know if Bryan Kohberger did it. Like, I just don't think his eyes are objective evidence. I think that that's a manipulation tactic by the news, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's a psychology manipulation because one of the areas that that humans tend to subconsciously connect with the most are micro expressions, facial expressions. Sometimes people are good enough and trained enough to be able to identify those on their own, or something inherent that we connect with is someone's eyes. That's why you know, it gets very personal. You could never meet someone ever in your entire life and walk up to them and get 6 inches away from them and look directly into their eyes, and you're already going to feel like a bond, you know, between you two. So if they can take something that's so personal and manipulate that should subconsciously alter the way that you view that person overall, to where if you create, again, this is why eyewitness testimony is not reliable, you guys, but if you create a mental image of something or somebody in people's memories, then when they see that person or thing, they will automatically see it with a filter of a non-objective, you know, image.
Yeah, for sure. I just saw this pop up for the first time.
What?
It's a prompt to ask if people want to become a member. That has never happened before. I think that's new. Have you ever seen it before?
That's interesting. No, I haven't.
And I did want to say hi to the cactus in the middle who said hi from Hawaii.
Oh, hi from Hawaii. That's awesome. I have some people I know in Hawaii.
And their name is the cactus in the middle, and they said, "Why don't you ever water me?" That's our cactus.
Yeah, the cactus in the middle. We need to
I think you're another alias, possibly.
Yeah. Maybe get a tin hat.
Our cactus is gonna wear a tin hat.
Yep. Yep.
Tin hat cactus.
But But yeah, I agree with you. The evidence given to support like who Bryan Kohberger is interesting. And it's interesting how successful mainstream media and news in general has gotten around subjective evidence. It's really interesting because it comes down to like almost that it's like a battle inside yourself, right? Because your brain wants to go objective, and obviously it's not literally your heart, but your heart wants to connect with the subjective nature of any situation. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So if you can get emotional enough, then you're gonna connect with the subjective nature. Yeah, subjective nature in any situation.
Yeah.
So it's hard to fight against that, and we talked about that in our videos around objectivity and subjectivity, and the video around scientific laws, theories, hypotheses, and facts. And you know, there are people out there that tend to inherently be more subjective than objective, and that's not a bad thing as long as you have an understanding of where you lie. You know what I mean? Where you
Hmm.
lean towards. Because as we talked about, and that's why we highlighted like the fallacies that have to do with logic and objectivity, is that there are some very big gaps in logic, objective based thinking when it comes to those logical fallacies, you know, like that idea that if it happened in this way in the past, therefore it must continue happening this way in the future. And that is literally what we talk about when cops are viewing a case through a keyhole. Is they believe, due to their experience and past, that because this happened then, it can't happen like this in the future. And another big thing that we see with cops is that a case sounds so bizarre that they absolutely refuse to believe it's possible. I've seen it so many times. So many times.
Well, like the Odinist theory.
Like the Odinist theory, like that that case that I wasn't able to get to due to time from Friday, where you know we'll talk about that this upcoming Friday. But it's so bizarre that cops are like, no way, it's not possible, it is not possible. Or that we see them fall into the thinking of it's always the husband. Well, 70% of the time, it usually is the husband, so you should start there. However, you have to be very, 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 very careful that you don't get stuck there, you know? And
Yep.
that's where the problems lie, is are you walking into a mud pit that you're not gonna be able to get out of? Or are you, do you understand yourself and your subjective or objective nature enough to understand that, you know, you need to pay attention so you don't get stuck in these things?
Right. And I wanted to say thanks, Art of Deduction. We'll definitely check out that email after the stream.
Yeah, yeah,
And good
absolutely.
night and take care of yourself. I hope you're doing
Yes.
okay.
Anne is the OG when it comes to Thought Riot podcast and
And
the true
Cynthia,
crime
Cynthia
talk show.
Gaines too, both of
Yeah.
them. Yeah.
Yes. I think Heather's been here for a while as well. And Jay, we have quite a few people.
J. Ray, Ian,
Yes, 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 yes. We have quite a few people who
King
have
of the
been with
Chat.
us for a long time. And that's incredible.
It
Incredible.
is.
Yeah, perspective is key. You're right. And I think that's one reason, you know, one of the main comments we get is like, you guys mesh so well together. Like your personalities, your theories, the way that you talk work so good together. And I think it's because we see things so different that that gives such a broad perspective that it allows for good viewing, you know? I'm a
Yeah.
statistics guy. You guys know this. I'm obsessed with statistics. Like I could literally talk about societal statistics, sociology all day long. And I've deduced that the reason why the show is interesting is because of that huge perspective model,
We
you know?
we bridge the gap.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
think so. That's my best guess right now until tomorrow.
Yeah, you guys in the chat are pretty great.
Yes.
Mother Malia, that makes me feel old or something.
I think it is Phil who's been saying that in comments too.
Mother Malia.
Yeah. Well, oh, dang it. Did our video get taken down because I changed everything to true crime? So, I think it did. One of our first videos, we were a priest and a nun, and it was before we went full-time true crime, and we did a whole podcast dressed as a priest and a
I hated
nun.
that podcast.
We need to do that again.
No.
We need to come on
I
here.
hated it.
The next one of these, I will come as a priest.
I felt weird about it the whole time. It was Brennan's
Why?
idea, and I was like, I look really weird as a nun, and I don't like this.
Why?
Why do we need to be in a nun and a priest outfit?
It's fun.
Not really. It wasn't
I mean,
fun.
I had fun. I like dressing up. Gosh.
No, I like dressing up for Halloween, but it was kind of weird.
I'll be shocked if they don't give the change of venue.
The change of venue makes a lot of sense, and it makes sense. I mean, it makes sense.
If they don't give the change of venue, I am going to be disappointed to say that I don't think he has a chance, regardless of what the evidence shows, if I'm being honest.
Right. If they need to schedule just because of parking lot places, that should say enough. That's what our deduction said. Like,
I mean,
yeah.
that and the fact they're giving him a time limit, like this case is only allowed to last this long. That is absurd, dude. Like, absolutely absurd. You have no idea how long a case is going to go, but like, hey, we care about you so much that we want your case to be during the summer when our students aren't here. Oh yeah, and it's only allowed to last this long. Make it work. You know what I mean? That's insane.
I guess I'll take that as a compliment.
That's insane.
ZJ just said I could be the girl at the end of a hall in a scary movie.
Yeah, that sounds like a compliment.
As a compliment?
Yeah. Scary movies are super cool.
A gorgeous one that you run after and B gets you. What, he kills me? He's the killer?
No.
Okay. You know what's funny? And I know it's totally like
I pass out from injuries, you guys. I don't even think I could be unless I was like angry.
You know what's funny is The Ring was one of the scariest movies for me as a young child, and me and my brother watched it one time when my mom wasn't home, and like we did it in secret. And then right after the movie was over, we both got up. He went to his room and I went to like my room or the bathroom or something, and our rooms were in the same hall. And I came out and I was standing there brushing my hair, and he came out of his room and screamed and slammed the door because he for real thought I was the girl from The Ring.
That's funny.
He really, really thought I was.
Yeah, the movie for me was the Blair Witch. Blair Witch was like
That's a scary one, too.
scary, super scary. The first Blair Witch that came out, I was terrified. Absolutely terrified.
So yeah, I guess your comment is pretty based, I guess.
Yeah.
But
it's gonna make
so
Judge look so bad if
Well,
he
I
doesn't
see a lot of
approve that
people-
or give an option.
I see a lot of people arguing that Judge isn't going to want to let this case go. But I thought if you had a change of venue, that doesn't mean you have to have a new judge.
That I don't think he wants to let it go either, and I think that's why they put in that wording that you had mentioned that one day about like flying people in.
Yeah, it was a commenter. I don't remember her name right now, but she works in something with lawyers, I don't know, or is a lawyer, and she mentioned it because I didn't understand that, and I read her comment. I was like, oh wow, okay, yeah. we went back to the beginning and figured it out. But I don't think changing venue means he can't be the judge anymore. I don't think it means that. I'm pretty sure it doesn't.
Yeah, I need to look it up. Actually, I think he would still
Well,
be
no,
the
because
judge. You're right.
Judge Goal was going to the courthouse in whatever county for Delphi.
Yeah.
And then remember, she had it moved to her home courthouse for the one where she basically kicked Baldwin and Rosie off the case. So she was going like they've went
Yeah,
back and forth
yeah.
courthouses. I don't
So that
think
is right. If they went to
Yeah.
Boise, it would still be Judge.
right.
Yeah. Then why not just go to Boise?
They haven't
dude?
asked to not have Judge. They've asked to just change the venue.
I think Judge is doing fine. There is with any judge, you guys, there is always like subjective nature that's brought into the case about who they are, right? And we've joked about Judge before where like he seems like the best grandpa ever, the most caring grandpa, like everybody get along, you know what I mean? Just like
Yeah.
wants everybody to get along, and his life is so happy skipping through the park like that's Judge in my opinion. So when you see a bad judge like a goal, okay, compare the two. You know, there's always going to be pros and cons to everybody. I've never ever one time seen a judge where I'm like, yes, that judge did everything right. And, you know, I agree with every single thing. And, you know, there's
Yeah, I
going
mean,
to be elements where you might not completely agree, but you understand it, or, you
yeah,
know,
they have to make hard decisions and they're
they
going off
do.
of working case law precedents and, all kinds of things. Like they have a lot of things they take into account when they're making these decisions. But CH answered the question and said that Judge will stay the presiding judge as long as it's in District 2, which includes Boise.
Oh,
I haven't looked that
that's
up,
good to
but
know.
CH is pretty on their stuff, so I
Yeah,
assume that they're correct.
that's good to know for sure. So yeah, I don't see any reason why they wouldn't or shouldn't transfer it to Boise.
Yeah, I don't see why either. Boise would seem ideal because obviously it would probably be a
Let's
bigger
see.
courthouse,
It
more
is like way
hotels,
more.
more parking. Like it seems like it's beneficial, bigger population, like all
Oh
of its
yeah, dude.
benefits.
The Boise just itself, right? Like Boise, Idaho is 237,000 people. Yeah. So, oh yeah. Oh yeah. That would be way better. That would be a much more fair jury pool, in my opinion. And that's just Boise itself. That's not even taking into account the surrounding cities. So
Right,
I think with the surrounding cities, I wouldn't be surprised if that doubled
right.
that 200K. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Very interesting. And that just adds a lot more fairism. I've been on my isms lately.
Yeah, we'll see. But um, you know, I saw somebody mention earlier, I think it might have been Plumbing in the chat, say, if you see mainstream media really honing in on one narrative, then you need to start doing your research and questioning it. And I think that's an interesting thing you bring up. And I'm going to bring up a different case now to talk about that because I just want to mention it and we don't have to go too deep into it if you don't want to, but it's the Kansas City 3, okay? The guys that were found. We have a video coming out on it, but I I feel like mainstream media is tearing into this guy with very little evidence. They have nothing. They have nothing at all. By all accounts, from what I see, my experience in life, I've been around, okay? I I know what is goes on in drug using circles, okay? I don't see any evidence this man should be charged so far. The only way that he should be charged is if he supplied those drugs. And I don't even know if I think he should be charged in that situation. It kind of depends. But in that situation, you have a whole group of men that get together partying, acquire, I assume, cocaine, okay? Because from from what we know about drugs being cut nowadays and being sold, um, a lot of times it could have not even been intentionally laced, you guys. A lot of times they are cutting these drugs like say you have a drug dealer who gets a bunch of coke and a bunch of fentanyl, okay? And they're cutting it up to sell to people. They do the coke first, or say they do the fentanyl first and then they do the coke after, and they use the same tools. Just a few pieces of that fentanyl in a bag of coke could kill people.
Oh yeah, it's literally
It
the
is that
yeah,
strong. So
yeah.
it could be not intentional at all. It could have been some guys that, because it sounds like it's a group of friends that went to go visit an old high school buddy and watch a game. And my belief is that guy that they're visiting is an addict. I mean, he went to rehab, which, yes, I do feel like is a
Shady.
tactic and shady.
Mhm.
I do believe that is shady. But it sounds like they all got together and they got drugs because they used to do drugs together in high school. And cocaine pairs well with alcohol. And they do it, and these guys accidentally OD on fentanyl because fentanyl is everywhere. We are having a crisis, a straight up crisis with fentanyl right now. And then you have this guy, okay, that doesn't see the bodies, which is questionable. I understand the questions there, okay? But does anyone know how many people have died from cocaine laced with fentanyl in the past year? It's a lot. It's a lot. I don't even have the full number on it, but I did see earlier today in a report that like 18, it was like literally in the double digits. Don't quote me, but it was the double digits of people in some northern state like Minnesota who died in weeks of each other from cocaine mixed with fentanyl.
Yeah, because it comes in batches.
And you can't tell the difference. You have no idea if it's laced. No idea. You could take a little taste of it and OD and die, like literally drop dead like that.
Yeah, all it takes is like the size of a pin. So like I guess a better measure is an eighth of a dime. So if you take a dime and then cut it into eighths, that's the size that you would need to OD with no tolerance. Yeah.
So how many people have died from cocaine laced with fentanyl this year?
Oh, I didn't even look that up. I just looked at
I thought
fentanyl
that's what you were
deaths.
looking up.
No, I was just looking at fentanyl deaths, and in 2021 and 2022, it looks like it jumped 70,106. I can look.
No, the drugs,
Fentanyl
you know what?
laced.
I think everybody goes through their time of experimenting with drugs, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that unless it becomes an addict situation where your whole life is ruined. But at this point, it's not even worth the risk of experimenting. Like, it's not worth it. It's
No.
not worth it. Everything is laced with fentanyl now.
It's only
So,
worth it if you have at-home testers, man. I would
yes,
not
you have,
ingest anything without
and
testers.
we're only giving this advice because we don't want people to die. Like, I don't want
Yeah,
to give you advice like, oh, they're promoting drug use. It's not that.
no.
It is that people are going to use it
Stay
no matter
safe.
what. People are going to use it no matter what. Stay safe. Get at home testing kits if you're going to do it. Have Narcan on hand always. So, I mean, I just don't see it as, I mean, the police have said there's no foul play. Like, if this guy is an addict, okay, and a true addict, okay, like true addict, it actually makes total sense to me why he didn't see those bodies.
Yeah.
Total sense.
It does to me too. I've been thinking the same thing, and the fact that he went into rehab like right away tells me a lot. It tells me a lot about him as a person. Because like three of your friends just passed, and one of your first reactions to that situation and news is like, it's time for me to get myself straight. You got a real addiction. You absolutely have a real addiction going on there. There's something up. It's just whether, he's connected to the deaths in some way or not. Uh, we've even speculated that, um, could they have got into his bag without him knowing, and I think that's even a real life possibility. So,
I think it's very possible that that's what happened. I think that's very possible, but what I assume is that I don't think he slept on the couch. I think he was nodded out.
mhm.
Because he has this faint memory of them walking out the door. I think he was nodded out, and I think the reason he did not die is because he has a tolerance. And I know a lot of people don't understand that. People think fentanyl and, oh my gosh, like 3 grains could drop, a full-grown man. That's insane. But people who have tolerances can do a lot.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
A lot
Absolutely.
more than you think. It
Like
is incredible
10 times or
it's
more.
it's
Mhm.
incredible what the human body can adapt to.
Yeah.
Tolerance is super important in this situation. Like, I hear everybody speculating, "Why did he survive?" That means they're automatically going to, "That means he's a murderer." No, that means his friends didn't have a tolerance and he did.
Yeah.
So even if they all willingly use coke together, like, who is even saying that guy is the one who supplied the drugs? Now, him being the only addict from all accounts, it is very likely he supplied the drugs, actually. Um, and yeah, I do think him going to rehab was legally advised to him. And, that's a lawyer doing their job and protecting their client. And while I think it's shady, I think he's just protecting himself. I just really, the question is, because I do not think this man intentionally killed his friends. The question is, if a group of people get together and decide they all consensually want to use drugs together, and one guy goes out and gets them and brings them back, and they all do them together, and people drop dead, does that mean the person that went out and acquired them should be charged? It's really a question of, morality. Now, I know in Missouri, the state this happened in, there is a law where he can be charged if he supplied drugs. And in Florida
Yeah.
right
Well,
now,
there's a lot of states that are
in
going that
Florida, you can
direction.
get the death penalty.
I mean, yeah, depending on.
No, like, for supplying drugs and somebody dying, you can get the death penalty in Florida now. So,
Whoa.
yeah, I know. So, I mean, really, that's the
And
question.
funny, their drug use stats haven't gone down.
See, I think it depends. I don't think that somebody, when everybody agrees to use drugs together and somebody goes out and buys them, and then people die, I don't think they should be charged.
No, no.
A lot of people feel that way, but
If
I
everyone
don't.
put in money, you are
If
equally complicit.
if you all paid for it,
Mhm.
you all consented and are adults, you all agreed to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, what the charge is because he committed a crime buying drugs and people died, and the only way they could have died was him committing that crime. That's how they charge him.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's I feel like that's just our unhealthy way of looking at addiction and drug use in general. We're just coming off of
Yeah.
one of the worst times in the entire history of the US, you guys. I think that mainstream media has done a very good job at downplaying just how detrimental the war on drugs was. It was, to put simply, one of the worst times in the entire history of the US, okay? It is the only time that we created our own citizens into our enemy, an enemy of the state, an enemy of the federal government. We militarized our police and took off the reins and let them have free reign at treating people awful, at stomping all over people's rights and freedoms. It was an awful situation, the worst thing ever. We never, ever, ever should have handled things as the war on drugs. You know what's interesting is the same time we were doing our war on drugs, is it Portugal? It is Portugal.
Yes, it is.
They were trying to figure out what they could do for their drug problem. They had very similar levels and statistics as us, and they took one of two choices: either go the direction of us and go towards the war on drugs, or B, go towards legalizing all drug use and managing the problem, not trying to prevent the problem from happening. Now they went with decision B and legalized everything. They saw a major increase in crime and drug use in the first year. The second year, they saw a major decrease. And now, 3 years later, they have some of the best addiction and crime rates in the entire world. It has completely abolished crime, major crime, gang crime, and like
It
mob
hasn't
style crime in connection with drug use. It has reduced the addiction rates by like
death.
an unheard of amount, and overall death. Yes, because instead of charging people with crimes, what they do is they if you get in trouble for having, any drug charge whatsoever, because it's still not legal, then you go to court.
It's just decriminalized, but they
Yep.
still pick you up and they get you
Yep.
help.
And then you go to court and you don't go to jail or pay a fine. You have to go see a doctor to talk about addiction and, your personal situation and everything. And they focused on the problem. And dude, they're leading the world
Yeah, but
right now in statistics.
I understand it gets political when you start talking about the war on drugs and the border and all of that. I think that all of that
I mean, the
needs
war
to
on
be
drugs doesn't have
all-
anything to do with the border.
I mean, that's where a lot of it's coming through. But the thing is, you guys, is that
But the war on drugs was on the citizens.
we wouldn't need any of that if we actually got people real help. Like if there wasn't, it's basic business. If there's not a demand, then there is no market.
Yeah.
There's a major demand. And just because drugs get flooded into the US does not mean, therefore, that creates a market. It is the opposite. Because the demand is high, that makes drugs be flooded into America because they know they're going to be able to sell it here. They know they're going to be able to move that way and make a ton of money because Americans are addicted. Like so many, like what is it, 1 in 6 Americans are addicts?
No, 1 in 4.
1 in 4?
It's 25%. And actually, I think it's closer to 30%. It is. It's 1 in 3, not 1 in 4. It's 1 in 3.
So I mean, I don't know. I think the way we handle it is all backwards and wrong. And I've heard a bunch of arguments against decriminalizing, but we actually have a country that did it and it worked.
Yeah.
It worked. Like there was a transition period where they had to get over that hump, but then once everybody was getting the proper help they needed, it fixed it.
Yeah.
I'm also super curious if we did something like that, how much it would help with like mass shootings. Because if people were actually getting the mental help that they needed, instead of like getting in trouble and flooding the prisons full of people and everything, like how would it change the culture of the US?
We'll never know as long as we have states that are, and I don't want to get too much into the politics, but we have states that are like side by side with each other, where one is like 3 strike rule on dope, and then the one next to it is completely decriminalization on dope. That that right there creates a market. That creates an increase. One state having a total control on it and the other state not. So it has to be all or nothing. Otherwise, you're not going to see any real change, because you got to focus on the problem, right? And addiction is a mental health issue. So instead of giving prison time and fines, send them to a doctor.
Yeah.
Go talk to a therapist, help them understand what addiction is, what it looks like, what it means, how to manage it,
And I understand I saw a couple comments like how we created an opioid epidemic, which I think was actually Britain, in China. And yes, that's true. And also how the pharmaceutical industry did it here in the US. So we do have obviously examples of how that epidemic was created, but just taking away the drugs doesn't fix that issue. Like it just doesn't. Like, for example, prohibition. Prohibition is the best example in history of proving how making something illegal does not stop people from doing it. It does nothing. If anything, it creates a massive, like, underground, a massive black market and makes people want to do it more. And then you have tons of criminal organizations running these things that are incredibly dangerous, which I think is the issue with drugs. If you decriminalize all of it, there wouldn't be a market like there is now. There just wouldn't. Um, I think it's just the way we handle all of it. I think if we changed that, it would be really beneficial. I really believe that. And I think the pharmaceutical industry would not have been able to cause an issue like this if it weren't for mental health issues. Because, yes, they got people physically dependent on opioids. But you know how many people I've met who were physically dependent on opioids back then and quit and didn't have a problem quitting?
Yeah, I mean,
Because
addiction isn't the physical aspects, it's the mental.
that's my point,
Mhm,
is that people can just quit and deal with the withdrawal and be okay. The people who have mental health issues are the ones who cannot.
mhm.
They are the ones who go on to start seeking street drugs because they can't handle the withdrawal because of the mental anguish that they're going through.
Yep. Yep. So I just posted our Discord link, you guys. And for anybody watching that's new, it is completely free, and you will never be charged for anything on Discord. But you do need that invite link. And if you're curious how it works, search on YouTube, walkthrough of Discord, because once you learn it, it's really easy and it's really fun to come hang out in there. Yeah, so we appreciate you all. And that is it for the True Crime Talk Show. Closing statements, I guess, is like, the reliability around time of death still blows me away. Like, I am absolutely shocked that uh the time of death, we don't have science to get it down to under 30 minutes. It's shocking that it's between 30 minutes and an hour and a half for reliability. And that seems to fit just right in with
Yeah.
the Idaho 4 case,
Yeah.
and bring some major questions in there. So I will be looking all over the place for new science that has more reliable time of death. Now, it's also this topic also helped me think about why some of those other tactics might not have been able to be used, depending on where the injuries were. If they were to somebody's core, that would have, opened that area up and created a flawed test when it came to, stomach food, measuring where it's at in the large intestine versus the small intestine, everything else that comes into it with stomach acid, all that stuff. So it's interesting considering all the variables that could or did alter the time of death, and I still feel like that statement from Kathy Madbut is weird, where she's making eye contact with the interviewer the entire time, and then when she's asked about the time of death, she very quickly, like, looks away, breaks eye contact, and is like, well, it is this time, I believe the police said, right? Well, you're the coroner, wouldn't you know?
Yeah, and I mean, there's multiple times of death. There's the legal time of death when the coroner declares that person's dead. There's the physiological time of death. And there's also a time of death that's based off of investigation, like evidence that police and investigators get from the crime scene to determine it. So there's actually 3 times of death. And I mean, physiological time of death is really what we were focusing on because of the discrepancies in the time of the crime, and the fact that it was changed from 3 to 4 to 4:20, or in that time range after 4. I was just really curious when I was looking into that. Is there any science out there that we're gonna see in the trial that is physical? Like, if autopsies can be narrowed down, if that's something that could go against the time frame that we're seeing now, or if it's too general to know, or what. And honestly, it seems like there's too many variables, that it's too much of a range, that I don't think it will narrow down anything. I don't think that's where we're going to look to find that information, unless we can find science they use that's new and groundbreaking, that is more consistent, more
Yeah.
reliable, narrows it down further.
Yeah, absolutely. 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 Now, make sure everybody, please, 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 please give us a thumbs up or thumbs down if you like the show or you didn't like the show. That's okay. We want your honest opinion, and our goal is that we're here for you and work for you. So you are the guidance for our topics, what we're going to talk about, how we're going to talk about it, and then we dig into the science and evidence and details and present it to you. So let us know how we're doing. Give us a thumbs up or thumbs down. Leave us a comment. Those are 2 things that you could do for us that are free and very easy. Only takes just a second to just say hello in the comments. Let us know what you thought. Let us know what you think. It helps the video get seen and spreads out there like seeds in the wind. And yeah, we'd appreciate you for that.
And yeah, plumbing. Cold slows things down, hot speeds things up, typically when you're looking at these pieces of evidence.
For bodies,
if you didn't
bodies
see
specifically.
Yeah, bodies.
But for
when
evidence,
determining the time of death
the
and the
opposite.
processes that happen in the body after death. So if you didn't see the premiere, go check out the time of death video that went up right before this live. And we will be back. What day is today? Wednesday?
Yep.
No, it's not Wednesday. It's
Yeah,
Thursday.
today
No,
is Wednesday.
it's Monday. It's Monday?
Today, no.
I am so off right now. That is disgusting.
Today's
Sorry.
Wednesday.
Today's Monday.
I
So
don't
we'll
think
be
so.
back. What time is it? Okay.
My vote is Wednesday.
We'll be back Wednesday, when it's actually Wednesday, hump day, at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. Until then, you guys, I hope you have a great Tuesday and night or day, wherever you are. And yeah, till then, bye.
All my training has me
I
backwards.
thought we were saying bye. You're gonna start talking again.
No. Bye, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Wednesday, specifically.